everyone. Thank you for joining us. I want to apologize for the technical delays that we had. As everyone knows, Amazon, or not Amazon, because I'm always fussing with Amazon, but everybody knows technology never works. YouTube was not working with us, but we figured it out. Thank you for your patience. And hello again, everyone. Thank you for joining us for a Wise Inc. interview with the author series. Today's live is about the power of children seeing themselves in the books that they read, a conversation with Anjali Jariwala about Southeast.
It's Cran, let me help you with my first name
please.
again.
I'm sorry.
It's Anjali.
Anjali Jariwala about Southeast heritage and culture. Thank you for correcting me. Please do that a lot. Anjali's first book, Why We Eat With Our Hands, is a celebration of Indian culture as explained through a special bond between granddaughter and a grandmother. Why We Eat With Our Hands came out last September and has been doing great. Welcome, Anjali. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Crown, for having me. So as Crown mentioned, I'm the author of the children's book, Why We Eat With Our Hands. A little bit about me. I'm also a mom. The main character in my book, Nyla, is my daughter. And my day job is I'm a financial advisor. I started my own firm about 8 years ago, Fit Advisor. So this has been a passion project, 2.5 years in the making. So I'm very excited that it's finally out in the world.
Yes, we are excited that it's out in the world. I read your book. I worked on your, at the end, I worked on help with the marketing, and I loved your book. I learned a lot about just the Indian culture from this children's book. This is one thing I love about children's book is that even as adults, you can learn so much about different cultures and different topics and different things. And I learned so much about your, Southeast Asian traditions, especially with eating with the hands. I've always wondered about that, and I never knew the reason until, reading your book. So what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, I mean, I was really inspired to write this book while building an inclusive bookshelf for my daughter, Nyla. Like many of us, right, we want bookshelves for children that feature different cultures, different backgrounds, different things. And, I was really struggling to find books that not only feature South Asian children, but are also written by South Asian authors. Because I think it's very important that if there is a book about specific cultures, identities, it's written by the person who shares in that culture or identity. I think it's just a different story. And so, there's a lot of great South Asian books that talk about our holidays and things like that. But I really wanted something that talks about our day-to-day culture, right? Things that we're doing on a regular basis that we may not know of. And so I wrote this book as a gift to my daughter because I really wanted her to have a book that she could see herself in. And also a part of me wanted to also help contribute to the representation of South Asian culture in children's literature.
I agree with you about that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book was I wanted a more inclusive bookshelf. And I think a lot of diverse writers, that's what motivates them into writing children's books. It's they do it for the children that are around them. Because did you think when you were, even 10 years ago, did you think that you would become a children's book author?
No, I'm a numbers person, right? I'm like a CPA and a financial advisor. And so I would have never thought about it. And it was actually, much more difficult process. I think it's because it was utilizing a side of my brain that I probably have not utilized since I was a child. But, when I started like trying to look for books for my daughter, I mean, it was a lot harder than I thought it should be, right? And as you know, there's still more books that feature children or feature animals than feature BIPOC children as a whole, right? So there's still like we're making progress. There's definitely more books out there than when I was a child. I don't remember a single book featuring a South Asian child, right? Maybe there's someone like who looked like a little bit like racial ambiguity. They could be Indian, but there wasn't really anything that was like what we are seeing now. But we still have like, a lot of work before we're getting to a point where there feels like there's representation for, all BIPOC children in the books that the children are reading.
Definitely. Like even as, yeah, I agree with you. As a kid, I didn't see any South Asian representation like in books. I definitely like didn't see, Black, Native. So we come a long way, but we're still not there. But it is parents like you, people like you who are like, I never thought about writing a book, let alone a children's book. But you saw a need, like Toni Morrison says, if there's a book out there that you want to read that isn't there, then go write it. And like you did
Right.
that. You did that not only for your daughter, but you did that for all Indian children, or children that look like your daughter or share in your heritage. This opportunity to feel seen in a book. For me, I believe it is the first time. Nope, the second book, because I have one book that I sell in my bookstore that is from a South Asian woman. So like this is only two books. I'm 35, and in like to say in only two books. And I know a lot of Indian children. I know a lot of Indian people, to say that we only have, like, I've only experienced two books. We need to do better. But thank you. People always thank me, but I want to thank you for not only writing this book for your daughter, but for writing it for all other children, because your mission originally started off as something for your daughter, but now it's taken on this life of its own. And I want to ask you that question, like, how does that feel, like knowing that you're touching so many other kids? Or have you had that moment where like a kid is experiencing for the first time feeling represented? Like, what are those moments like for you? Because I know I've been there, so I want to know like what that is for you.
I know it's been, you write the book and you put it out there, but you're not sure like what people are feeling, right? Until they share it with. So I had a mom reach out to me and tell me that like her daughter refused to eat with her hands until she read, and she's South Asian, until she read the book. And now she always wants to eat with her hands, right? And she's like, I so appreciate, because it's something in our culture. And the other thing was like, I especially felt passionate about this topic because not only did it talk about like day-to-day culture, but it also talked about something that might be misunderstood, right? Like eating with hands in a very Western culture sense has always been viewed as like a negative, but it's not. There is a reason. There's a beautiful reason many cultures of color eat with their hands, right? So that's why I have a back matter for educators and for parents to help them understand. And so that was really like very impactful for me, that, even if I sell no other books, like it made a difference. I had another mom reach out to me and told me she cried because of the fact that when she was growing up and she would take Indian food for lunch, which many of us did, she would get made fun of, she would get ridiculed. And just to see something like eating with the hands exemplified in the book, it brought tears to her eyes, because she was so happy that she had this book to share with her children, and her children feel proud taking Indian food for lunch, right? My daughter takes Indian food for lunch. She eats it with her hands, doesn't care what people think, right? So I just think that it's been such a like wonderful experience to be able to like hear people's stories and perspectives and how it's impacted them in their day-to-day lives.
That is beautiful. Like, just to think that little girl probably was ashamed because she didn't understand, and because it wasn't a Western thing, she thought it was bad. But then to be reaffirmed with your book, that's beautiful. Like, because it's that reaffirming that, like, yes, it's okay. Like, what you're doing is normal. It's not bad. It's beautiful, and it should be celebrated. And like, to hear that your book was that reminder. Oh, I bet you that moment was like everything. Like, did you frame that message? Like, was it a written message?
It was a text that was sent to me. It was actually my sister-in-law texted me from her friend. So I've been wanting to like just capture it, right? Because I think it's just it's so wonderful to hear that, because I'm like, okay, like here's this book. Hopefully someone's reading it, and to see like what impact it has on people has been, I mean, it's been so, there's no words to describe it, right? I'm sure you've experienced the same thing. It's really personal. Like what I do on a day-to-day basis in financial planning is great, but the book is so much more personal to me because it's about my daughter, who's, my favorite person in the whole wide world. So just to like get the reaffirmation from people after reading the book has just been so great. And so I'm glad, like, I had a lot of doubts because the process took so long. It was a lot of work, more than I expected, as you know. But just to like hear those stories, it's like, it's been totally worth it to put my, time and soul into this project.
Yes, yes. Like you said, if you never sold another book, knowing that that one little girl was affected is all it takes. And like, that's what it is like to be a children's book author, especially when you're writing about topics like this, when your book is more than just a story, but there's a mission and a purpose behind it. It's those moments that are like, yeah, okay, I can do this again. I can go down this long journey again, because like you're affecting change in a way that like you wish you had as a kid, like I know as a kid, I wish I had more children's books that had girls that looked like me and had experiences that I had, and had, types of hair and shapes and stuff that weren't like, white standard beauty, to tell me that it was okay to feel this way. It was okay to look this way. And like the power that books do that I just love it. I'm just in heaven right now. But what made you decide to write about that topic? Like the food and the eating with the hands, like you talked a little bit about it, but like what really made you decide, out of all topics that you could have shared with the world about South Asian heritage and culture, why was it the eating with the hands one, which I love, because I've always been curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. Like when I started on this journey, right? Like I have notebooks filled with like, I must have hundreds of different children's books topics in there, right? And so like, just like brainstorming, and like nothing was really clicking. And then, I was reading the book to my daughter, Where Are You From? Which is, I would say, the inspiration for this book. It's like this little girl, and everyone's asking her like, where are you from? And she goes to her grandpa to ask. It's just this like everyday question that like, people like us will get, right? Like, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from here, like the United States of America, right? And they're like, no, where are you really from? Right. And that's exactly like how the book goes. So I started thinking about, in South Asian culture, I was like, what's something that we're doing that's just kind of misunderstood? And, I just thought, oh, we eat with our hands. Like, I wonder why we do that. And I actually didn't know why until I started researching for the book. And then once I started researching, I was like, wow, this is like such a beautiful reason why we eat with our hands, right? The fingers represents an element of nature. It also like our impact and our connection with nature, which is so important. And so once I started researching, I knew like this was the topic I wanted to write about, because not only does it talk about South Asian culture, it's a topic that is misunderstood. So I was very much a proponent of like debunking things that tend to be misunderstood in terms of like South Asian culture. And then I thought it was a beautiful way to showcase like the bond that my daughter has with her grandmother, her nani, because in our culture, just like many cultures around the world, right, a lot of what is taught to us is from our grandparents. Like it's the grandparents that teach a lot of the culture to the grandchildren. And Nyla's so lucky that she has both sets of grandparents who can teach her these things. So I'm not in the book for a reason, because I really wanted to showcase this, bond. So I felt like the topic really helped touch upon a lot of things that I had in terms of my personal mission for the book. And so I was really happy with how everything really came together at the end.
I know it's such a beautiful topic. And just like, I've always been curious because, like you said, not only South Asians eat with their hands, but a lot of other brown and Black and indigenous cultures eat with their hands. And after reading your book, I did do, like a quick Google search.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like, what did you find?
There are a lot of different reasons, like I know in the South African culture, they eat with their hands more so like as a cleanliness. Like they don't think utensils are as clean as your hands. Like your hands to them are like the cleanest part of your body. They're constantly washing them. And then it's a connection with the food and yourself. And then there was another like spiritual aspect of like a disconnect when you use utensils, of not respecting like the food. So like just learning like the different reasons behind why people eat with their food, how it is a very Western modern thing that happens, and just how much more healthier it is. Like those are some of the things that I was like really curious and astonished by was that it's like a lot more healthy. Like there's a lot of illnesses that correlate with like dirty utensils and like your food and things like that. So that was
It
another.
also like for portion control, like, and I couldn't fit everything in the book, even though I wanted to. Like your fingers, like there's only so much food that fits in your finger that you can eat versus like a spoon or something where you're eating a lot more food, right? And you're not connected from like your senses perspective. So I mean, I think that's wonderful that you kind of got inspired to look into it too. And it's interesting to see because there's so much overlap, but still little subtle differences. But there's deep meaning as to why these cultures that have been around for much longer than Western culture have been doing this and why they still continue to do this, right?
Yes. And just it's beautiful traditions. Like it's a tradition. And it's said that it's, you know, in this Western world, it's lost and it's deemed like ugly or dirty, when in reality, it's probably one of the cleanest, safest ways to eat food, to ingest your food, which is crazy, you know, as somebody who's born and raised in America, a very Western person, I wouldn't have thought, like I had the ignorant thoughts of like, no, that's dirtier than me eating with a fork. But then, you know, taking that moment to think outside of myself and do research after reading your book, it was like, no, I was wrong. I was being ignorant in my thought process, and thinking that what they were doing was dirty, when in actuality, what I'm doing is probably way dirtier. And they probably look at me like, you're weird. Why are you don't need a fork to eat, you know? And it's like, there's certain foods in Western culture that we do eat with our hands, no problem. But like, I wouldn't think of like eating macaroni and cheese with my hand, you know what I mean? Because
my daughter will. She eats everything with her hands. But But that's why these books are so wonderful, because it provides a teachable moment, right? And there's such a, like, I feel like people are hungry for that. They're hungry to like learn and understand, and they really want to like, you know, have an appreciation for it. So that's why I just like, you know, all the books that are coming out and all the books that are there that really like touch upon these various traditions and can teach us. Like, I mean, I've learned so much from reading various children's books over the years to my daughter, right? It's just such a beautiful way to convey it, especially to like our children who can, you know, they're not coming in with preconceived notions about things like many of us are as adults. For them to be able to absorb like all of these like beautiful stories, and for them to come into it with an appreciation that, you know, a lot of us maybe didn't have because we just didn't have these books and resources available to us as children.
Yeah. And it's for adults, it's a lot of unlearning. Like these books help us unlearn like stereotypes that have been, you know, drilled into us from, you know, childhood. And I say it all the time. I feel like children's books can heal the world, because there's just so many lessons and things, takeaways that you can take from a children's book and you can put into a children's book that, I mean, if you guys aren't reading children's books as adults, you're missing out on some great lessons, some great teachable moments. Even as adults, like I learned so much from children's books. I read them like so much, but there's so many like takeaways that you can take away from like different books. And I use books and a lot of children's books to learn about different cultures. I say this all the time. Books from authentic cultures about authentic like people in these cultures can teach so much, can heal so much, because there's so much that we're fed in to believe into, instead of like really diving in and learning the truth. And that's why diverse books, especially like Why We Eat With Our Hands, are so important. And coming from somebody of this culture, of this background, of this race, explaining like, no, this is why, is how we can grow and learn as like human race, is what I believe. But what was your biggest takeaway that you wanted readers to get from this book?
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway was that I'd like the readers to be able to normalize the existence of many cultures within our country, right? Like, despite everything, like the United States is such a wonderful place because of how many different cultures are represented here, right? Like, I mean, it's so amazing. And so the more books there are like Why We Eat With Our Hands, right, it helps normalize it for like people as a whole. And I also, you know, wanted a book for the South Asian child who really wants to understand more about their culture And I think it's helpful for non-South Asian children who just want to understand more about a culture that's different than their own, because we're such a melting pot in this country. When, as mentioned earlier, when I was growing up, I would hide aspects about being Indian in order to fit in. I was born in Los Angeles. And then when I was 12, we moved to Chicago, and we were in a very like non-diverse neighborhood is what I would say. So it was a little bit of culture shock for me. So it was a lot of hiding parts of my culture, because the main goal was to just fit in, right? So like I told my mom, like, no, you can't, no more Indian food with lunch, right? Just like trying to be, more blending in instead of being able to stick out. And I think it's nice to see that times are changing. We still have a lot of work to do, but times are changing, because now Nyla is growing up in a time in which different cultures are not only discussed, but they're celebrated. I mean, I've done so many book readings of at various schools. I just did one recently. I think you helped set that up, and it was so wonderful. It was a school and they wanted to celebrate Api Heritage Month. Found out about the book. They had me come read the book. The children asked such cute questions. And so I think it's just so nice that Nyla, and this kind of goes back to like why I wanted to write the book, is like Nyla can go into an environment in which she can be truly uniquely her South Asian self, in addition to her American identity and culture, and she can blend it and really be proud of it and celebrate it. And she doesn't feel the need to have to hide it or it's not fit in, because everyone around her is interested in learning about that, right? So I think it's just and that's what I would say, like takeaways is really just to like, be able to celebrate the fact that we have all these cultures. And I think that this generation of children are really growing up in a true melting pot society. And I think their perspective on how they're going to grow up is going to be different from like our generation or, my parents' generation. And so I think the more books there are like this, I think that's just going to help bring about more change, because this is a generation that's really going to bring change in our country.
Most definitely. I definitely agree. And Nala seems like she is not embarrassed, ashamed. Like she's like, I'm South Asian. You better love it or get out of my face. She sounds
I mean, she was eating with her hands, I think like 2 weeks ago, and someone asked her like, why do you eat with your hands? And she's like, because I'm Indian. That's what I do. Right. And yes. It was just like there was no qualms. And then the other kid was like, okay, like maybe I should try that next time. Right. Like it's so nice that she has that ability to be her authentic self that I think a lot of us didn't have growing up. And so if my book helps her and helps other children feel like they can be their authentic self, or helps, parents educate their children on like, hey, this is something really cool and interesting about a culture that we don't know enough about. I think it was well worth the time and effort to put this book out there.
And that's the mission, for authors like us who write for the biggest reason is that representation, like the power of the representation, like mostly non-BIPOC people don't understand what it's like to not be seen, because they've always been seen. They've always been able to relate to characters in books and movies and TV shows. But as somebody who grew up and rarely saw yourself or not at all saw yourself represented in the materials that were put in front of you, seeing yourself for the first time, it's a powerful thing to reaffirm a child and ground a child. That's one of the things I say when I talk about representation. It's very grounding for a child to see themselves and being told that they can be whatever they want to be, or what they do within their culture and at home is okay and it's normal and it's to be celebrated. And like your daughter is a big representation of the power of representation, of feeling seen and feeling affirmed in who you are, and being able to then go out into the world and just be like very matter of fact, because I'm Indian and that's it. There's no but why, nothing else to it. It's that's why, and this is what we do. Accept it or don't accept it, but this is me, and I'm proud of who I am. And that's where that representation comes from, in books, like seeing themselves in these people that are represented in their TV shows, in the things that they watch, they read, they listen to, like being told and being represented is so powerful. And your daughter is just that representation. That's kind of what I was getting at. I was kind of rambling, but I mean, I'm just
No, that's
excited
okay.
for your
It's great. We're all doing great work to help that cause, right?
No, we are, and it's important. You know, it's just I can never talk more about how it is important and how important it is for non-BIPOC children to have these types of books, because this is how they learn. You know what I mean? Outside of themselves, outside of their own world and their bubble. This is how they learn that my classmate who's eating with her hands, that's normal because that's what she does in her family. And in my family, we eat with a fork, and that's normal and that's okay. Like, that's how kids learn, you know, that's how they learn that, you know, Black boys can grow up to be doctors, you know, if they've never seen it, but this book told them that a Black boy can. So at that age, they absorb that. And that's why children's books from authentic background authors representing their authentic cultures are just the cornerstones of our culture. I don't care what anybody says. We need more of that all the time. As somebody who wrote a book for a very specific reason for the first time, as someone who was like, I am not an author, like that wasn't the dream or the plan. What advice do you have for other BIPOC people specifically who want to do what you did and write a book to help represent their culture? Like, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, you know, the experience it was so rewarding, but also very emotionally challenging, right? Just like anything, like, you know, as a business owner, as a mom, there's so many aspects to it. So my advice is to be comfortable pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. I had to push myself really outside of my comfort zone to make this happen because it's so out of my realm of expertise. It was an industry I knew nothing about, right? And so, you know, there were so many times in the process I was just like, forget it, right? And then, you know, I was like, so what I did personally was like, I just took the process and I try to break it down into manageable steps, right? So I'm like, okay, now let's look for an illustrator, right? Like, now let's work on the story. Now let's try to figure out printing, right? And so that was helpful for me because I try to break it down like I would a financial plan, like components, steps, and then we build up to the final product. And so, you know, I think you take like the experiences you have and the expertise you have and create the process that works for you. I also, you know, it took me 2.5 years. I'm pretty sure that's way longer than what it takes someone else to write a children's book. But for me, it was really important not to make it feel like work, like a job. Like, I really wanted to keep like the joy and the passion of it. So I worked on it when I felt like I had capacity, right? And, you know, this book came out from COVID. Like, I was doing it during COVID while also like being a mom and managing my business, and my daughter was out of school. So like, it just took me a while because I was like, if I was burnt out, which, you know, a lot of us moms get burnt out pretty easily. And I didn't feel full. I was like, I'm not going to work on this. Like, I don't want this to become like another chore, another to do. Like, I'm going to work on it when I feel like I have capacity to be able to keep that joy in the process. And I think I just was like lucky in that I found so many wonderful women of color who helped me on this journey, right? I worked with Suhani Parikh. She's the founder of Modern Marigold Press. She was the one who really, you know, kind of helped me from a consulting perspective in terms of like the story, the illustrations, helping me find the right editor and really getting me like 75% of the way there. And then of course it was wonderful to come across Wising to really help me get to the finish line. So I noticed that, you know, every time I felt deterred, something would pop up that would give me the energy to keep things going, as well as help me move forward. So I think that when you're really like passionate about something, I think things just fall into place, and that you're really like it, you get to where you need to be. And, you know, as you've said it so eloquently, like, there's such a need, right? I would love for the day to come where it doesn't take me hours of research to build an inclusive bookshelf. I want to be able to just like go and be like, okay, top 10 books, perfect. These are all exactly what I want, right? So I think that there's just such a need, and there's such a need for not only just, you know, BIPOC authors in general, but just different perspectives and different voices out there. Everyone, like, someone else can look at the topic of why we eat with our hands and write it in a completely different way. So I just think that it's so helpful that if someone wants to do it, put their voice out there and to be able to tell that story, because their unique experience is theirs to share. And there are a lot of people out there who would love to see that experience and read it to their child, including me.
Yes, yes. And so what advice would you give someone in researching a topic? Because you mentioned earlier that you didn't know a lot about why in your culture you guys ate with your hands, and you researched it. And where did you go? Like, was it just a quick Google search, or was there more in-depth places where you found like the meaning for all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I was like looking for the book I have on my, so there's a book that was recommended to me called Writing Picture Books. So I kind of, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I'm like, let me buy books to teach me how to, it's like how to write a book for dummies, right? So I like start with that. And a lot of that book and other books I was reading was like, just like, you really have to just like have a clear mind. So like, don't put pressure on yourself, right? Just journal and see what comes up. And then like, there are various topics that I was like coming up, and then I would start researching it. And I was just waiting for the one that felt right, right? Like some topics, it was like, okay, this is interesting, but didn't feel right, especially in terms of like a children's book and what I wanted to accomplish. So I think it's a lot of it is like, we have to take out, and this is very hard for me. Like I'm a very type A personality, very numbers driven. So like for me, it really was like what I said earlier. I had to like put myself outside of my comfort zone, and I had to allow myself to just like think freely, journal things that I would normally not do, and take out like the analytical aspect of it to give myself some like clarity to really think outside the box, right? Because that's what a lot of like, that's what books that resonate. It's really books that like think outside the box, right? It's like there are no parameters to a children's book, which is great, but also very difficult if you're a writer or an illustrator, right? There's no parameters. So you're just like, I mean, you could have like, someone writing a unicorn on a rainbow going to, it's just, it's such a broad range. So I think you also have to be like true and authentic to yourself in terms of like what feels right. For me, what felt right was like simple story with Nyla and her grandmother. Most of the pages are like in the home, right? So I tried not to do too many different scenes, too many different characters, because I knew for me, it would be too much. And I felt like it would deviate from the beauty of the story. So, but I think like you have to be true to yourself in terms of like how you want to approach the process, and find people who can help you, right? Like I had all these people on my journey. And then also shout out to Sarika, who is my marketing person. She's the one who actually gave me the idea to write a children's book when we were working on marketing for my financial planning business. And she's like, you always want to talk about your daughter. She's your passion. So have you ever considered writing a children's book? And I thought that was crazy. And then, I started thinking about it some more, and I was like, why not? Why not try? Like you could always like, if it doesn't work out, it's okay. But like, at least try, because you'd be so surprised as like how far you can get, and finding those right people along your journey to help you get through those hard parts. The other thing that was so helpful is when I started on this journey, I met so many other like-minded people doing the same thing. I met so many South Asian moms, same frustrations, wrote children's books because they just saw this need. And that was so helpful for me to have like community, have other people who come from a similar background, or came from like corporate world, something completely different, and just is like, this is a passion project. And so I think finding that community is also really helpful, because it can be kind of isolating doing this all by yourself. So for me, community was also really important to just help me get through like the difficult parts of the journey, right, and keep my motivation going.
Yes. Community, and we think of writing as like a solo act, which it is. But as writers, we love community. We do find your writers. Writers love to, I have writer friends all over the world. We just Zoom with each other. But that is a good piece of advice. Like when you're on this journey, find writer friends, find people that understand the struggle you're going through, and can just be that support system for you.
Right. And everyone's so supportive, which is like, was so like, it was like kind of surprising for me, because like I've come from like business corporate environments, right, where it's always been like hyper competitive. Like there's literally no competition in this. There's
Oh,
such
yeah.
a big need that like, even if we got like thousands of people writing books, there still would be a need, right? So like everyone that I've come across has been just so supportive with the process. And really like, even when I've been down, like, I don't know if I could do this, like just meeting other people who are like, no, you have to do this. This is so great. Like, I can't wait. Right. So like, it's just, it's such a nice like experience to have where like the community you build, like everyone's going to be like your cheerleader throughout the entire process because they're just excited about it as you are. Right.
Yes, I agree. They're just as excited and they understand the mission. You know, with something like your book, I feel like it was an important book to be put out, not only just so that South Asian children can feel represented, but to teach the world just a tiny bit about something that they didn't know. And just that alone is an important aspect of it. If I'm remembering correctly, your illustrator is South Asian.
She's
correct?
not. So that's what was interesting is I went through 8 different illustrators and I had them all, like I had like a little bit of a folder of pictures of Nyla. And I said, like, the book is about my daughter Nyla. Like, how would you depict her in a picture, right? And every time like an illustrator would send me an illustration, the ones that I was thinking about, you know, I would have Nyla tell me. I was like, what do you think about this one? And she'd be like, no. And then, you know, I came across Shelley. She was recommended to me from like another friend from like a Facebook group. And as soon as she sent the illustration, I mean, it was just perfect. Like Nyla was like, oh my gosh, that's me, right? And so it was like, I originally went into it thinking like I would like someone South Asian because of, you know, I wanted the depiction of the culture to be accurate. But I think that working with Shelley was way better than anything I could expect because for her, she was learning about the culture while writing the book. So she was able to depict things in a way that like I wouldn't even think about because to me it's just like, oh, this is just normal. I'm Indian, right? But she like the way she like depicted like the mandala design on every single page and the way she did and the little things she point out and the research she did to make sure that she was representing the culture appropriately was like so great. Like she was like the perfect illustrator for my very first book. I mean, that's one of the number one compliments I get on the book is like how beautiful the illustrations are. I mean, there's one where, you know, it's the earth and there's Nyla like watering a plant and there's like this little mouse. And a friend of mine was like, where do I get that mouse from? My daughter wants that mouse. Like little things that I wouldn't think about. She's like, I'm on Amazon trying to find this mouse, stuffed animal. And like, I like little, like, you just don't know like what kids like resonate with, right? Like I would have never like Shelley put the cute little mouse in there. And I was like, okay, this is cute. But I would never think like someone like, I need that mouse like now, right? So
like my whole life depends on finding this mouse.
Right.
Yes,
she sent me a picture. She's like, you think this will work? I was like, yeah, that looks pretty close to the mouse in the book. And she's like, okay.
Well, now you know for future marketing to get a little stuffed mouse to sell with the
right
book.
Stuffed animal that goes with the book.
Yeah, like it looks like the mouse was a hit. But I brought up the illustrator just because I know that, you know, for BIPOC people, the illustrator is very important. Like that's one of the biggest, like finding somebody that can depict your characters in the right way, you know, not the stereotypical way that most illustrators in the past have depict BIPOC characters. So it's wonderful to hear that you found it in a non-South Asian illustrator, because sometimes, you know, that for me when doing my books, I know that was like the scariest part is like finding the right type of illustrator, because for children's book, the illustration is like a big part of it. Like that's what the kids resonate with. You resonate with the story and the words, but your illustrations have to pop. They have to grab their attention.
Right. Also, and for me, like skin complexion was very important because like in South Asian culture, there's so much colorism, right? So like a lot of times illustrators that I was finding like from India wanted to depict her as like very light skin. And I had to say like, no, like she's brown. Like I wanted to make sure she's brown in the book. I don't want this like colorism overlay on it. I thought that was like one of the most important aspects, right? And so the first illustration that Shelley sent me, like Nyla was brown, right? Like a perfect complexion, exactly what I wanted. So it was already like I think it's just like it's a team process, right? The illustrations are like as important as the story. So you have to really find someone like you can collaborate with. And like it also for me was like keeping an open mind, because I was a little bit like set on like using someone South Asian, and I just couldn't find someone who I felt like really got it or where it clicked. And when I came across Shelley, I was like, I'm gonna step out of like whatever box I've decided on, right? And I want to, because she did such a beautiful illustration, I really want to like see how we can work together. And we did. Like and it was almost like better in a sense, at least for my first book, because she's also like, this is her first children's book. I think she really appreciated the opportunity. Yeah, and she's very big on like diverse books in, representation in children's literature. So I think for her, like, she really put her heart and soul into it. It wasn't just like another project that maybe someone who's done a lot of them, like for her, it was also, she carried the same passion for it, which I think just, you can see it in the illustrations because they are so beautiful and really well thought out. And I think a lot of it is her, because I am not an artist. Like, I have no idea. So I'd just be like, do something. And then she'd come back with something. I was like, oh, this is so beautiful. Like, not. And so I was really like, when you're writing a children's picture book, you usually are giving like instructions on each page for your illustrator to follow. And I kept mine pretty vague, because I wanted her to have like the freedom and the creativity to see like what she would come up with. And what she came up with was like way better than I could have suggested to her. So it was like, we worked really well together as a team, and I'm like, so happy. I'm very thankful that I was able to find her, because I just don't think anyone else could have done it as well as she did. She really just did such beautiful illustrations for the book.
Yeah, finding an illustrator for picture books is like a big part of the whole process. Finding that person that you click with and that gets your vision. And you guys seem like a wonder team, like, because you created a masterpiece. Like, I really love the illustrations.
Thank you.
I love the story. My niece is obsessed with the book. I got the book for her. So it's one of her faves right now. And so, yeah, like, you guys did an amazing job. I definitely want to point that out. We have a few more questions for you. How do you keep up cultural traditions centered? Wait, I read this question wrong. Let me reread it. How do you keep cultural traditions centered outside of your traditional spaces, like your holidays and things like that? How do you teach your daughter to be proud of who she is in a Western space?
Yeah, it's a lot of work, because nothing is really designed around that. So like, I'm really big on exhibiting those cultures and traditions outside of just our household, right? So we put in a lot of effort on that. So like, I usually will put together some sort of event for her class for Diwali. So this year, luckily, there's a few South Asian families, so we came together and we did a Diwali thing for the kindergarten classes. There's 2 of them. And so, I made sure it was like, let's do a book. So to help them understand it, give them time to ask us questions, and then an activity, and then food, right? So it's like something that Nyla is really proud about, because like, here's her mom like at school talking about Diwali, which I also was very adamant that I wanted Diwali to be her favorite holiday, right? When I was growing up, all we talked about was Christmas. Like, Diwali was like, we did it, but it wasn't like, there wasn't that much like fun and excitement. So like, I put in a lot of effort, just like how we celebrate as a household. We make it a really big deal, right? And Nyla will ask, like, she just asked me like the other day, she's like, is Diwali next month? And I was like, no, girl, it's still like 4 months away. But it's so sweet that she gets really excited about it, right? Like, we go to Cerritos, which is like the little India here. Like, we go there during Diwali time, because I want her to be immersed in like the experience of like, being around a lot of South Asian people. They do so much stuff there. And so I think it's like, when I was growing up, right, my parents were immigrants. So like, the main goal was to assimilate, right? So we celebrated the cultures and traditions, but it was more like from outside of the house. It was like more like, let's just assimilate. I think like my generation, we know that if we don't continue with the cultural traditions, there's only a few generations and then they will be gone. And that to me, is very heartbreaking. Like, I don't want, because I identify with being Indian. I think there's so much beauty in our culture, in our traditions, and what we do. And I would hate for that to go away after Nyla or the generation after her. So that's why, like, me, and I know a lot of parents are like this, we're like very adamant about creating these experiences for our children, immersing them in things that like, so that they continue to be really proud of their culture and their tradition. And they're seeing it in spaces outside of just their home, knowing that it is something that's accepted and celebrated versus when I was growing up, you know, it was just, it stays in the home. When you go out, we're American, right? That's so it's just a different mindset, I think, in terms of like how Nyla is growing up. And then I think I'm, you know, I just try to be much more proactive, right? Like I'm going to email, like when my book came out, I emailed the school librarian. I said, look, I wrote a children's book. I would love to donate a copy. Librarians, you know, librarians, I love librarians so much. You know, she's just like, I love this. And she's like, why did you write it? I was like, because there needs to be more representation in children's literature. And she's like, I absolutely agree. And she brought in the kindergarten, first and second grade classes. I did book readings, right? And so it's so nice to like see like that I've felt like I had the ability to do that without any qualms or preconceived notions. And I'm like, I wrote this book, let's talk about it. And then like what the school did to really support it, right? And to bring in the kids and like just to see their expressions and them absorbing it it was so great.
That sounds beautiful. That's wonderful to hear. Like, so what I'm hearing is the biggest, so for somebody with a BIPOC background who is trying to immerse themselves more in their heritage and culture, I want to say the biggest takeaway I heard from you is that get it outside of the home is what I'm hearing. It's like you did a lot of like, as a kid, it was like in the home with the family, like we kind of kept it hush hush. And now you're saying as a mother of your own child, you're like, no, I scream it from the rooftop. I immerse her in everything. Wherever she is, I bring her culture with her. And so like, is that what I'm like hearing you say is that you
I mean, it's like, you know, it's work. Like we have to be proactive about it. We can't just like, because it's not the dominant culture of this country and that's okay, but all that means is that we have to put in more effort to make sure that she retains those cultures and traditions. And I just don't think personally that in order for her to retain it, we can do it in the home, but for her to also accept it and be proud of it, I feel like needs to be exhibited outside of the home as well, right? So I think both pieces inside the home and outside the home really needs to be there, not only for them to retain it, but for them to feel proud of it, so that when someone is like, why are you eating with your hands? She's like, I'm Indian. She's proud of it, right? And she stands for own. Like that's the thing is we want to raise, you know, I have a daughter. I want her to be raised with confidence and I want her to be raised with her identity and her feeling proud of her identity. I think that's a lot of what we're doing with these books, right? Any author who's writing books like this, they really want the person to feel very proud of their sense of identity, which I think is so important because I don't want it to be lost, right? I want it to be retained for generations and generations to come.
And how do you, with trying to retain your culture and your heritage experiences within your daughter, how do you celebrate other outside cultures and outside heritages with her while still holding her firm and strong in her Indian culture?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. So I think books are such a great way, and just, you know, having friends of other cultures and like celebrating with them, or me asking like, what do you guys do to celebrate X, Y, and Z, right? Because I also don't want to infringe on cultural appropriation or anything like that, but I was like, I just want to like make Nyla more aware. And the nice part is that, you know, so much of it is already happening in school environments. I mean, we're lucky we live in Southern California. Cultures are celebrated, right? The teachers like, hey, it's like this month, like does like what, asking the kids, what do they do? Like reaching out to the parents saying like, we'd love to celebrate this in the classroom. Like, what do you recommend? Can you come in? So I think, and I don't think that deviates from her sense of identity, right? I think it's just helps her be more aware that there are people different from her, which just helps reinforce her identity, because being different is something to be proud of, not something that you want to like shy away from or hide, right? That's the end goal, is to just celebrate the differences that we all have, and you know what works in each family to do so.
Yes. So one last question. How do you raise a curious eater?
So what's funny is that when Nyla started eating solid foods, like the first foods she was introduced to were Indian foods because, we were lucky that, my mom stayed with us for a while to help, and then my mother-in-law, so like they were cooking the foods that were cooked back at home in India. So like for her, I was very big on like, making sure she tries every food, and especially for Indian food, like pretty early on, like I would incorporate some of the like more typical ingredients that we use, like cumin and turmeric, right? So just so she gets used to the flavors. And unfortunately, it's, any mom or parent knows this, it's like an ongoing exercise because taste buds do change every few years. So something that she may have eaten, she'll be like, I don't want to eat that now, or it's a perfect time to introduce new foods. And so we're lucky she's a pretty good eater. I mean, not everyone is, and that's okay. But I think books like this are helpful because it introduces the curiosity, and then you can take it to the next step, right? We read a lot of books that have food, and I was like, oh, that sounds good. I was like, okay, let's try that food next time, right? And when I do book readings, there's a lot of references of different types of Indian food, and I will stop to explain what each of those foods are, just for the benefit of the child who may not have tried that food before. And a lot of kids will be like, that sounds so delicious. I was like, yes. I was like, and you could go to your local Indian restaurant and try it if you like, tell your parents, right? So I think it's just fostering that curiosity, right? And being open and willing to try different foods, even if you haven't tried it yourself. And the main thing is that I am a big proponent of teaching Nyla that if she doesn't like the food, especially if it's a food of a different culture, that we don't say negative things about it. It's okay if you don't like it, but we're not going to say like, ew, this is gross, this is right. Like I'm very big on that. Like it's much more like, we're going to try it. If you don't like it, that's okay. But it's not nice to say this about a food because you don't like it, because it's someone else's food that they love, right? I'm like, it's similar to if someone said Indian food is gross, which they may not like it, and that's okay. But saying that it's gross is hurtful to our feelings, right? So I think it's just showing respect to the food in the process. And food is such a connector, right? Food breaks down barriers, food brings people together. So food is such a great way to introduce culture to children as well, because there's no preconceived notions. It's food, it's delicious, it brings people together. Let's try something new and see what happens.
I agree. Food is a great connector. So for a family or who has never experienced Indian food before and are trying it for the first time or introducing it to their child for the first time, what dish would you recommend for like a first time dish to really get the experience of Indian food and really, know what it tastes like?
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because if you're going to go all in, like it might be difficult because it is a lot of different flavors. And if someone's not used to that, like it can be, you don't want to turn them off to the process. So I would start with like the more basic stuff, like start with naan, which is the bread that you find in most Indian restaurant, right? And then if that works well, then like paneer, which is the soft cheese. Paneer is always like a bestseller with kids. So like paneer, ask the restaurant, like, or wherever you're getting it from, like which one is mild, like the most mild of the flavors. Like Nyla likes like the saag paneer, which is this spinach with the cheese. And then just start slowly introducing more and more foods, right? If you have someone Indian who can come with you the first time, that's great. If not, there's so much information out there. It's pretty easy. And like a lot of these restaurants are so used to like so many different people coming in. So you could always ask them, right? Like I had a situation where one of Nyla's school friends, her like has a nut allergy. And so her mom, they went out for Indian food and she had it for the first time and she had a reaction. And she was telling me about it. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, because like, I was like, any Indian dish will have 15 to 20 ingredients. Nut is a big component of the base of it. So like, and she's like, I feel so bad because she loved it, but now she's like traumatized by it. So we actually like did like a play date. And before we went and did the playing part, like we went to an Indian restaurant. I was like, let's just go. I'll tell you what to order. Let's try it again, right? And she like, we ordered something dosa, which is much simpler. That's also a really good intro one because it's like a crepe. So also things that like, you can find the like Western equivalent of like naan is like bread, dosa is like a crepe. Like I think that makes it easier for kids to like understand and try it. And she ate it and she's like, I don't love it, but I don't hate it. And I was like, I'm just proud of you for trying it, right? And so,
Mhm.
little things like that is like, I think just finding the equivalent. You don't have to be overly ambitious, right? The main thing is just to like have them have the experience of it and start to develop the taste buds of it because it's a lot. So if you're not used to it, like Nyla eating Indian food since she was like 6 months old, right? Like, don't put so much pressure. Like, my child doesn't like Indian food, right? It's really just like start small, start with the things that they do like. The Indian sweets are also like usually a big hit because they're like
Mhm.
so sweet and sugary. I don't particularly like them, but kids love them, right? So there's things there's like the mango lassi, which is equivalent to like a milkshake. So I think just finding the ones that have like a little bit more like recognition that to something that they may be used to eating is like I think helpful in terms of like having a child be more open-minded to try it.
Those are all great, like great advice on getting kids to eat like foods that they aren't used to, aren't traditionally on their menu. Basically, closed mouths don't get fed. So when you go to the Indian restaurant, guys, ask questions, ask what spices are in them. And they'll tell you. I love Indian food. When I first ventured into Indian food, I had a lot of questions. I'm like, well, how is spicy?
Mm-hmm.
I like spicy, but Indian spicy is a
Oh
whole
yeah,
nother
no, it's a
spicy.
different
I
level.
learned
No,
that the hard way, So it's
I
like,
am mild at an Indian restaurant. For
I am
me.
too. I'm mild too. Like I thought I'm like, oh, Indian hot and Mexican hot are two different hots. I can do
Right.
Mexican hot. Indian hot, I cannot do. I was like, I thought I was dying because it was so good. It was just so hot. Like it was like
It's so hot.
eating like a
Yes.
pepper, like a raw pepper. I was like,
Right.
oh my God. And it's like I wanted more. And I tortured myself. I ate the whole thing, but I definitely tortured myself. I was sweating. But I like food that makes me sweat. So, I mean, I had a great time. But that first time having that, like, definitely ask about their spices. Like, that's my piece of advice.
Yes.
Ask about their spices because Indian hot is a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
And if you're not
whoa.
sure, opt for mild, right? You
Yes,
can
opt for
always
mild. Yes. Or
use
like,
Chinese, there's green chili, there's all this stuff to supplement if it's not spicy enough for you. But like, yeah, Indian spice is a whole different ballgame. I mean, I can't even eat that level anymore, right? I was like, I
oh
have
my
acid
God.
reflux. I'm not going to touch that and make it mild, right?
Right. I do say if you want to clean out your sinuses, hot Indian food will definitely have you snot
Definitely would do that.
everywhere, clean out all your sinuses. I
We'll have to
definitely,
follow with like a glass of milk or get
yep.
yogurt. Like every Indian restaurant will always have yogurt. We eat a lot of yogurt with our dishes, so you can always get that on the side too, or
Mhm.
the raita, which is the cold yogurt with like fresh cucumber and mint. So there's
There's
there's options.
options. Yes, options. Well, thank you, Anjali. I said it wrong again. Unjali. Because
Anjali.
Anjali, I don't know why I want to pronounce that so bad. I just do. Anjali. Thank you, Anjali, for joining us today for this amazing conversation. I had a great time. Just remind all of the viewers where they can find you and where they can find Why We Eat With Our Hands.
Sure. So you could find me on my website. It's anjalijariwala.com. There's a link for my book. My book is also on Amazon. If you don't want to purchase it on Amazon, which I understand, you can get it directly through Itasca Books, which redirects on my website. Even if you purchase it elsewhere, please leave a review on Amazon. The more reviews I have, the more people can find the book.
Yes. And is there anywhere that they can follow you on social media if they want to keep up with you or your journey?
Yes, I forgot about that one.
No
So I've
problem.
also, Instagram's the best place to follow me. My Instagram handle is _Anjali Jariwala. You can also kind of search Why We With Our Hands. I tag that a lot. So